Living a good life is about finding a balance between our own happiness and the well-being of others. The Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, has spent his entire life sharing profound insights into this idea, showing us how ethical living is at the core of our true happiness and the well-being of the world. He speaks of how both individual and societal ethics are not just desirable, but essential. Imagine if each of us, as part of this vast interconnected web of existence, took a step toward kindness and responsibility. What a beautiful transformation that would be, not just for ourselves but for all of humanity. Ethics at the individual level. The Dalai Lama often says that the fundamental purpose of life is to seek happiness, but not the fleeting happiness of material possessions. True happiness, he reminds us, comes from inner peace. It's about cultivating compassion and kindness. Imagine a world where, instead of focusing on what we can gain, we focus on how we can serve others. It may sound idealistic, but the Dalai Lama insists this is where real joy lies. Compassion is not a luxury, it is a necessity. When we truly care for the happiness of others, we also alleviate our own fears and insecurities. Have you ever noticed how emotions like anger or greed feel like storms within you? They disturb your peace, don't they? The Dalai Lama teaches that compassion, that simple wish for others to be happy, acts like a balm for these turbulent emotions. It's as if, by caring for others, we find stability and calmness for ourselves. Living ethically means consciously choosing actions that benefit others, embracing our interconnectedness, and remembering that our own well-being is deeply tied to that of others. The Dalai Lama also reminds us that ethical living requires courage. It means standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. It means making choices that reflect our values, even when those choices are not the easiest or most convenient. This kind of courage is not about grand heroic acts but about the quiet, consistent decisions we make every day to be kind, to be fair, and to be compassionate. Imagine if we all had the courage to choose love over hate, understanding over judgment, and generosity over selfishness. What kind of world could we create together? Ethical living at an individual level also requires a deep commitment to self-awareness and reflection. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes the importance of introspection, taking time to examine our thoughts, emotions, and actions. This process allows us to identify the areas where we may fall short and to make conscious efforts to improve. It is not about perfection, but about progress. It is about recognizing our flaws, understanding our motivations, and striving to be better each day. Imagine if each of us took just a few minutes every day to reflect on our actions, to consider how we might have been more compassionate, more patient, or more understanding. How much more harmonious would our interactions be? The journey towards ethical living is not without challenges. We live in a world that often rewards selfishness and materialism. The pressure to succeed, to accumulate wealth, and to compete with others can make it difficult to prioritize compassion and kindness. However, the Dalai Lama teaches that true success is not measured by what we have but by who we are. It is about the quality of our relationships, the depth of our compassion, and the positive impact we have on the lives of others. Imagine if we redefined success in these terms, if we celebrated kindness and generosity as much as we celebrate wealth and power. What kind of society could we create? Societal ethics and non-violence. How do we create a more peaceful world? The Dalai Lama's answer is both straightforward and deeply challenging, through non-violence and compassion. He speaks often of ahimsa, not to injure. It's about more than avoiding physical violence, it means speaking and acting with care so that we don't cause harm, even unintentionally. Imagine if, instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, we chose dialogue, respect, and understanding? Wouldn't our communities, our countries, and even our world be transformed? The Dalai Lama often highlights the importance of ethical leadership, leaders who prioritize compassion, who serve rather than dominate, who uplift rather than oppress. He calls for leaders who hold themselves accountable and who make decisions not for power or profit, but for the well-being of all. Imagine if those with influence truly saw themselves as servants of humanity, what a change that would bring. The Dalai Lama's emphasis on non-violence extends to our daily interactions as well. It is not just about refraining from physical harm but also about avoiding harmful words and thoughts. Have you ever found yourself lashing out in frustration, only to regret it later? The Dalai Lama teaches that true non-violence begins in the mind. It begins with cultivating patience, understanding, and empathy. Imagine if we approached every disagreement with the intention to understand rather than to win. How much suffering could we prevent? Non-violence is not a passive stance, it requires active engagement. It means standing up against injustice, but doing so with compassion rather than hatred. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of dialogue in resolving conflicts. He believes that through open and honest communication, we can find common ground and work toward solutions that benefit everyone involved. Imagine if, instead of resorting to violence or coercion, we approached conflicts with a genuine desire to understand the other side, to find a solution that respects the dignity and rights of all parties. How much more peaceful would our world be? The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of forgiveness in the practice of non-violence. Holding on to anger and resentment only perpetuates the cycle of violence. Forgiveness, on the other hand, allows us to let go of the pain and move forward. It is not about condoning wrongdoing, but about freeing ourselves from the burden of hatred. Imagine if we all practiced forgiveness, if we let go of the grudges that weigh us down and chose instead to focus on healing and reconciliation. What kind of world could we create? Environmental responsibility. We often forget that living ethically also means caring for our planet. The Dalai Lama reminds us that we are not separate from nature, we are part of it. How often do we look at the beauty around us and remember our responsibility towards it? Our choices, big and small, have a profound impact on the environment. From conserving energy to reducing waste, each of us has the power to protect the earth for future generations. Isn't it humbling to think that our actions today can either nurture or destroy the delicate balance of life on this planet? The Dalai Lama calls for what he describes as universal responsibility, a sense of accountability that goes beyond our immediate needs and desires. It's a responsibility not just towards our families, or our communities, but towards every living being, towards the entire planet. Imagine how different our world would be if each of us acted with this mindset, with a deep, abiding care for all that shares this earth with us. Environmental responsibility also means recognizing the interconnectedness of all life. The Dalai Lama often speaks of how the health of our planet is directly linked to the health of its inhabitants. Pollution, deforestation, and climate change are not just environmental issues, they are ethical issues. They reflect our relationship with the world around us, and they call us to act with greater awareness and compassion. Imagine if we all made choices that respected the earth as a living being, deserving of care and protection. What kind of legacy could we leave for future generations? The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the importance of education in fostering environmental responsibility. He believes that teaching children about the importance of caring for the planet is essential for creating a sustainable future. Imagine if every child grew up with a deep appreciation for nature, with an understanding of how their actions impact the environment, and with a sense of responsibility to protect it. Wouldn't that create a generation of individuals who are committed to living in harmony with the earth? Secular ethics and modern education. How do we instill these values in future generations? The Dalai Lama's answer is secular ethics, an approach that transcends religion and taps into our shared humanity. Imagine a world where schools not only teach math and science but also teach compassion, empathy, and mindfulness. Wouldn't that help us raise a generation that's not only knowledgeable but also deeply caring and responsible? He envisions an education system where students learn to care for their own mental and emotional health, where they learn to question with empathy, and where they are encouraged to serve others. It's about developing the heart alongside the mind, a balance that feels so urgently needed today, doesn't it? The Dalai Lama believes that ethical education should focus on developing emotional intelligence. In a world that often values competition over cooperation, imagine if children were taught to see each other not as rivals but as companions on the journey of life. Imagine if they learned from an early age that their worth is not defined by their achievements but by their ability to love, to care, and to contribute to the well-being of others. Wouldn't that create a world where empathy and kindness are the norm rather than the exception? The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of mindfulness in education. He believes that teaching children to be mindful, to be present, to be aware of their thoughts and emotions, is crucial for their overall well-being. Mindfulness helps children develop self-awareness, emotional regulation, and empathy. Imagine if every child learned to pause, to take a breath, and to respond with kindness rather than react out of anger or fear. How much more peaceful would our schools, our communities, and our world be? Education, according to the Dalai Lama, should also foster a sense of global citizenship. He believes that children should be taught to see themselves not just as members of their own country or community, but as members of the global family. Imagine if every child grew up with a sense of responsibility towards all of humanity, if they were taught to care not only for their own well-being but also for the well-being of others, regardless of nationality, religion, or culture. Wouldn't that create a more compassionate and united world? The role of compassion in ethical living. At the heart of all the Dalai Lama's teachings is one simple yet profound idea: compassion. It's the key to everything: personal happiness, social harmony, global peace. Imagine if we could see each other's suffering, truly see it, and feel a genuine desire to help. This is what the Dalai Lama asks of us: to extend our compassion beyond our families, beyond our borders, beyond our own comfort zones. To truly care. And let's not forget self-compassion. It's so easy to be our own worst critics, isn't it? But the Dalai Lama teaches that to extend kindness to others, we must first be kind to ourselves. Self-compassion creates a foundation from which we can reach out and uplift others. Compassion, according to the Dalai Lama, is not just a feeling, it is an action. It is the willingness to do something to alleviate the suffering of others. It is the courage to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult. Imagine if we all made compassion the guiding principle of our lives. What kind of changes could we bring about in our communities, in our world? The Dalai Lama also speaks of the importance of expanding our circle of compassion. It is natural to feel compassion for those we love, but true ethical living requires us to extend that compassion to strangers, to those who may be different from us, even to those we may not like. Imagine if we could see the humanity in everyone, if we could recognize that beneath our differences, we all share the same desire to be happy and free from suffering. Wouldn't that change the way we treat each other? The Dalai Lama teaches that compassion is not a sign of weakness but a sign of strength. It takes courage to open our hearts, to be vulnerable, and to care deeply. It takes strength to put aside our own needs and desires in order to serve others. Imagine if we all had the courage to be compassionate, if we all chose to act out of love rather than fear, out of generosity rather than selfishness. What kind of world could we create? Ethical living in the modern world. In our rapidly changing world, the Dalai Lama's teachings are more relevant than ever. Technology and globalization have brought us closer together but also presented new challenges. Social media can connect us or divide us. Economic growth can lift people out of poverty or increase inequality. The Dalai Lama challenges us to use these tools mindfully, to choose compassion over profit, to use technology to enhance our understanding of each other rather than create barriers. He asks us to celebrate our cultural differences, not as a way to divide us but as a source of mutual enrichment. Imagine a world where we see our diversity as a beautiful tapestry, each thread unique but all contributing to the whole. The modern world also requires us to rethink our priorities. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the dangers of materialism, how the pursuit of wealth and status can lead to emptiness rather than fulfillment. Have you ever felt that hollow feeling after achieving something you thought would make you happy, only to realize it wasn't enough? The Dalai Lama reminds us that true fulfillment comes not from what we have but from who we are and how we treat others. Imagine if we all shifted our focus from accumulating things to cultivating kindness, from seeking success to seeking meaning. How much more content and at peace would we be? The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the importance of gratitude in ethical living. In our fast-paced world, it is easy to take things for granted, to always be looking for the next achievement, the next possession, the next goal. But gratitude helps us to appreciate what we have, to recognize the beauty and abundance in our lives, and to cultivate a sense of contentment. Imagine if we all took a moment each day to reflect on the things we are grateful for, how much more joyful and peaceful would our lives be? The practice of mindfulness in ethical living. Mindfulness is crucial. It's about being present, about noticing the impact of our actions. Have you ever reacted in anger and later regretted it? Mindfulness helps us pause, helps us choose our response instead of being driven by emotion. It allows us to act from a place of compassion rather than fear or anger. Imagine if, in our everyday interactions, we all took a moment to breathe, to reflect, and then to act with kindness. How much suffering could we alleviate? The Dalai Lama teaches that mindfulness is not just about individual well-being but about our relationships with others. When we are mindful, we are more attuned to the needs and feelings of those around us. We are better able to respond with empathy and understanding. Imagine if we all practiced mindfulness in our interactions, if we truly listened to each other, if we took the time to understand before reacting. How much more harmonious would our relationships be? Mindfulness also helps us to see the bigger picture. It reminds us that our actions have consequences, that what we do today shapes the world of tomorrow. The Dalai Lama encourages us to be mindful not only of our thoughts and emotions but also of the impact we have on others and on the planet. Imagine if we all lived with this kind of awareness, if we considered the long-term effects of our choices rather than just the immediate gratification. Wouldn't that lead to a more compassionate and sustainable world? The Dalai Lama often speaks of the importance of mindfulness in addressing the challenges of the modern world. In a world that is constantly demanding our attention, mindfulness helps us to stay grounded, to stay focused on what truly matters. It helps us to navigate the complexities of modern life with a sense of calm and clarity. Imagine if we all made mindfulness a part of our daily routine, if we all took the time to slow down, to breathe, and to be fully present in each moment. How much more peaceful and fulfilling would our lives be? Interconnectedness and universal responsibility. One of the most beautiful aspects of the Dalai Lama's teachings is his emphasis on interconnectedness. We are all in this together, every action we take has a ripple effect. Our happiness is tied to the happiness of others. Isn't that a comforting thought? That we are not alone, that our efforts to be kind and compassionate make a difference, even if we don't always see it immediately. The Dalai Lama teaches that recognizing our interconnectedness is the first step towards ethical living. It helps us to see beyond our own needs and desires, to understand that our well-being is linked to the well-being of others. Imagine if we all took this to heart, if we lived as though every person we met, every living being, was somehow connected to us. Wouldn't we naturally be more gentle, more loving, more responsible? Interconnectedness also means recognizing that our actions have far-reaching consequences. The Dalai Lama often speaks of the concept of universal responsibility, the idea that we all share a responsibility for the well-being of others and of the planet. Imagine if we all felt this sense of responsibility, if we all acted with the awareness that our choices affect not only ourselves but also those around us, and even future generations. How much more carefully would we act? The Dalai Lama encourages us to extend our sense of compassion and responsibility beyond our immediate circle. It is easy to care for those who are close to us, but true ethical living requires us to care for all beings, even those we may never meet, even those who may be very different from us. Imagine if we all felt a sense of responsibility for the well-being of others, regardless of their nationality, religion, or background. Wouldn't that create a world where empathy and kindness are the guiding principles of our actions? The power of small actions. The Dalai Lama often emphasizes that ethical living does not require grand gestures. It is the small actions, the everyday choices, that make the biggest difference. Have you ever held the door open for someone, or offered a kind word to a stranger, and noticed how it brightened their day? These small acts of kindness may seem insignificant, but they have the power to create ripples of goodness that spread far beyond what we can see. Imagine if each of us committed to performing just one small act of kindness each day. How many lives could we touch? How much suffering could we alleviate? The Dalai Lama teaches that these small actions, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. It is a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small we may feel. The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of consistency in ethical living. It is not enough to act with kindness and compassion once in a while, it must be a way of life. Imagine if we all made a commitment to practice kindness every day, to treat each person we meet with respect and empathy, to make choices that reflect our values. How much more loving and just would our world be? Ethics and leadership. The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of ethical leadership. He believes that true leaders are those who serve others with humility and compassion. Leadership, according to the Dalai Lama, is not about power or authority but about taking responsibility for the well-being of others. He encourages leaders to practice empathy, to listen to the needs of their people, and to act in a way that benefits society as a whole. Imagine if our leaders were motivated not by personal gain but by a genuine desire to serve. Imagine if they made decisions based on what was best for the people they represent, rather than what was best for their own careers or financial interests. The Dalai Lama believes that ethical leadership is essential for creating a just and compassionate society. It is a call for leaders who lead with their hearts as well as their minds, who prioritize the common good over personal ambition. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the importance of integrity in leadership. In his view, ethical leaders are those who align their actions with their values and who are willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. He believes that leaders should be held accountable for their actions and that they have a duty to use their influence to create positive change. Imagine if all leaders acted with integrity, if they were guided by a sense of responsibility to their communities and to future generations. What kind of world could we create? The role of women in ethical leadership. The Dalai Lama has often spoken about the role of women in leadership and the importance of gender equality. He believes that women, with their natural capacity for empathy and nurturing, have a crucial role to play in building a more compassionate world. Imagine if women were equally represented in positions of power, if their voices were heard and their perspectives valued. How different might our world look? The Dalai Lama encourages us to recognize the strength and wisdom of women and to create opportunities for them to lead. He believes that greater gender equality is not only a matter of justice but also a necessity for creating a balanced and ethical society. Imagine if we all worked to break down the barriers that hold women back, if we all supported and uplifted the women in our lives. What kind of world could we build together? The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of empowering women through education. He believes that education is the key to unlocking the potential of women and to creating a more just and equitable society. Imagine if every girl had access to quality education, if every woman had the opportunity to pursue her dreams and to contribute to her community. Wouldn't that create a world where everyone, regardless of gender, has the chance to thrive? Ethical living and global challenges. The Dalai Lama's teachings on ethical living are particularly relevant in the context of the global challenges we face today. Climate change, inequality, conflict, these are issues that require collective action and a deep sense of responsibility. The Dalai Lama reminds us that we cannot solve these problems through technological advancements alone. We need a shift in our values, a shift towards compassion, empathy, and ethical responsibility. Imagine if we all approached these challenges with the mindset of universal responsibility, if we all felt a personal stake in the well-being of the planet and its people. Wouldn't that lead to more meaningful and lasting solutions? The Dalai Lama teaches that ethical living is not just about personal transformation but about contributing to the greater good. It is about recognizing that we are all in this together and that our actions, no matter how small, can make a difference. The Dalai Lama also speaks about the importance of hope in addressing global challenges. He believes that even in the face of great difficulties, we must remain hopeful and committed to positive change. Imagine if we all held on to hope, if we all believed in our ability to make a difference, if we all worked together towards a better future. How much more resilient and united would we be in the face of adversity? Conclusion. The Dalai Lama's vision for an ethical life is simple but profound. It's a call to action, a reminder that each of us has the power to make the world a better place, not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices. By practicing compassion, choosing non-violence, and embracing our responsibility to one another and to the planet, we create ripples that can lead to lasting change. Isn't it inspiring to think that we have this power within us? That by simply choosing kindness, we can contribute to a world that is more peaceful, more just, more compassionate? The Dalai Lama teaches us that ethical living is not about perfection, but about effort. It's about progress, not judgment. Each step we take towards compassion, towards mindfulness, is a step towards creating a better world. Let's take that step together. After all, the journey of creating a more loving and responsible world starts with each one of us. Are you ready to begin?